Hey guys, it's your host, Bailey Cartwright. Welcome to the Stronger Scars podcast, where I invite others to dive deep into the ups and downs of physical and mental scars. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Stronger Scars podcast. I have been completely MIA for months. I understand that I have been completely MIA for months. And not much has happened. I mean, I feel like I'm in a good place. I just needed a break. I feel like we all sometimes need a break. And I'm excited to be back. I think I have a new refueled mindset, mission, and I'm just really excited to continue doing the podcast, continue sharing other people's stories, share my own story, just help people. I feel like I just want to keep helping people. So it's been a while, but we're back. We're back and better than ever. And if you're still here, if you're still listening, or if you're new, welcome. And I pour a lot of energy and love into this podcast, so thanks for being here. And yeah, let's get into the episode. Today I'm joined with Jess Stratton. She is such a sweetheart, and I see a lot of me in her and just her passion and the outcome of her injury, the way that she really wanted to turn it into. It was hard for her, it was hurtful for her, but she wants to help be a soundboard for other people who are going through something similar. So Jess, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody else, I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Again, we are back and better than ever. So welcome to the Stronger Scars podcast. Today, I am joined with a very special guest. Her name is Jess Stratton, and she is on the cross country and track team at the University of Delaware. I am so excited to have her on here. We are going to talk about a topic today that I feel like just gets lost in the scheme of everything going on in the athletics world. And Jess, I'm so excited to have you here. Just go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you so much, Bailey, for having me on. So like Bailey said, my name is Jess Stratton, and I just graduated from the University of Delaware. I was a nursing major, so I actually just passed my NCLEX and became a nurse today. So that's super exciting. Thank you. And then I started out as a soccer player, so being outside mid really got me into running, and then I decided late in the game that I wanted to run track in college, and so I ran for 4 years at University of Delaware.
Awesome. I think what I'm excited for the listeners to hear from you today is just how passionate you are, because I am a very passionate person, as I hope everyone knows by now. And when people are passionate about something, you can just see their face light up when they talk about it. And I know you've been through a lot. You've been through a lot of hard times. And I just think that coming out on the other side of it and being able to still be really passionate about that topic and still be able to share your story with other people for good, I think is really incredible. So you should be proud of yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Yeah, my experiences have made me super passionate about what I have to share, because I just wish that nobody would have to go through sport the way that I did and learn things the hard way. And I think if I was educated more as a younger athlete on we could get into it, but the importance of your period and fueling and all of that, I wouldn't have made the mistakes that I did that led me to all the injuries that I had in my career and kind of turned my career down the path that I didn't think it would go in the beginning.
Yeah. So I do want to, I feel like, just give a disclaimer that this may be triggering to some people to listen to. So this topic is, we're going to talk about eating disorders, the eating disorder spectrum. So if that is something triggering to you, just a heads up, that is what we will be talking about for the majority of the episode. But without further ado, Jess, thank you in advance for just being honest and open with us. I think I told you when we were talking before that this is a topic that needs to be talked about, but few people truly want to talk about it because it's, I feel like with a lot of things that we're not like told that we're supposed to have in our life, like whatever, if that's something caused by accident or you brought upon yourself, whatever it may be, we're so shameful of it. So we don't want to share it, even if it could really help other people. So I just thank you in advance for sharing. And with that, why don't you kind of just walk us through your journey? I'll let you go through all the terms. I don't want to mess anything up. So just kind of walk us through your journey with food and how it all kind of started for you.
Sure, yeah. So for me, so like I mentioned before, I originally was a soccer player. So early high school, I was totally committed to soccer. And then kind of in the beginning of my junior year, I did track from the beginning of high school. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. But it was solely to stay in shape for soccer. No means of pursuing track. And then basically my junior year, I kind of realized that I was more talented naturally at running track. And I also was an outside midfielder, like I said. So I was always doing the running up and down the field. So I realized I was pretty good at track and wanted to commit more to that sport. So I was doing indoor and outdoor track, which were the winter and spring seasons. And around the winter time, I just started to make a lot of changes in my life because I had kind of made that decision that like I'm committing to track now. And I thought that I had to start eating super healthy. So that was kind of the first thing. And I was very influenced by the people around me. And I would like to comment a lot on the running culture because even in early high school, like that running culture amongst like athletes who, were serious about track, but looking back, like it was nothing like college. Like we're still influenced so much by like this healthy eating culture that surrounds running. So a lot of my teammates were also influencing me, and we all influenced each other to eat super healthy. So that was kind of the first change. Like I started um really taking like food in my diet into my own hands. Like I didn't want to eat any of my mom's meals anymore. I wanted to cook everything on my own. I started like switching just everything I ate to like super organic and super all natural things. And basically thought that this was the way to become good at running. And I obviously started taking training more seriously, like running more um miles and like just like being committed to those small things outside of practice, like stretching and recovery and like strengthening and stuff, because we didn't lift as a team in high school. So like I would do that on the side. Like I just started doing all that, but the main change for me was eating. And the main thing I want to emphasize on that is that like this idea that you have to eat super healthy to be fast is such a myth, and it's all over social media, and the culture of not just running but sports in general, I think just has like a lot of diet culture. So basically what happened at first is I got super fast from that. And I want to explain why this happened, because actually scientifically, as you um start to rapidly lose weight from like this dieting, um your body actually responds by using the energy stores that you previously had. So you can actually, your performance might temporarily increase. And but the problem with this is that it's not sustainable at all. So while your performance may increase for a super short time, when you start not eating enough to meet your energy demands as an athlete, this will not last, and it will be unsustainable and will like decline, and you will not be able to last on those energy stores. So then you start getting in an energy deficit cycle, which is what happened to me in late high school, where I just simply was not eating enough to meet the energy demands of my sport. So that was kind of the beginning of the journey, and then it continued into college where I got super restrictive because college was a huge transition and it was a high level. So I started getting super uncomfortable with like the dining hall, and like I wasn't able to just fuel myself enough, and my exercise was like tripled just like unintentionally because of like the intensity of college training, and I just wasn't aware that I was burning so many more calories than I was even consuming. So
Okay, so I have I have a few questions, but my first one kind of stems from you were talking about the whole eating organic only, being super conscious, wouldn't eat like if your mom's making something from just normal groceries. Where I know you're not an expert or anything, but like where is the line? Because I feel like everyone should aim to want to be healthy and eat a healthy lifestyle. But I also understand everything's in moderation. But I feel like it's proven, like I shop at Whole Foods because I just feel better when I'm putting organic food into my body. Is it the restriction that's the issue? Is it the you need moderation is the issue? Where's that line drawn?
yeah, I absolutely love that question because of course, as athletes, like we want to eat healthy. We want to fuel our body with like nutritious food, and we want to have a balanced diet that's going to keep our body like optimally functioning, right? So, such a good question because yeah, like where is the line drawn with that? And I think there's a huge difference between being disciplined and being disordered. And I've heard this kind of like back like those two sides of the spectrum a lot before. And I think that like it's really what comes like I kind of didn't mention this like as I was explaining before, but along with eating super healthy, I was cutting out every single like every single dessert and sweet, anything that had sugar in it, anything that was like fattening, quote unquote. So like I was cutting out like dairy and like cheese and milk, like anything that I thought was going to like be fattening or something, I was cutting out. And then also like anything processed, I was cutting out. So yeah, I think it's honestly, it comes down to like the restrictiveness and like where your intentions are coming from. And my intentions was like solely to become better at my sport, and the way that I thought I had to do that was to lose weight and kind of match that body ideal of running. I think the key is having balance
Mm.
and understanding um that food is your fuel. Like food is your energy to perform well. And so kind of changing the narrative that food is not detrimental to your body as an athlete. Food is not going to make you worse in any way possible. And the way that I started to reframe it is that like food is what is going to give me energy to perform well. And like all these things that I was cutting out, like the sugar is like not only happiness in my life, but like energy to perform well, and pre-workout fuel, or like a nighttime snack that leaves me feeling satisfied and also happy. um and then like dairy and the things I was cutting out before, that is like calcium and vitamin D for my bones, and like tons and tons of protein, so for recovering like my muscles and everything after working out. So it's totally like, I think the way that you reframe these things. But yeah.
Okay, so then my follow-up question, which I feel like this has to be something a lot of people think about runners, is obviously you guys, your workouts are hard. You're running miles and miles a day. So you're thin. You, regardless of what you're eating, you're burning a lot of calories, you're thin. What does the eating issue come, or eating disorder come from the true, just the nature of the sport? Like, is that something that is bred into the sport? Like, you must eat this to be thin to run. Does it come from body image issues? Like, what do you think, or maybe in your experience, like, what was the underlying issue?
Yeah, so I think the underlying issue is this culture that emphasizes this body ideal of being super thin, and that thinness is equated with being fast.
Mm,
And I completely do not agree with this kind of expectation and standard that is out there in the running world. And I think it's important to mention too that there are these body ideals in every single sport. They just may look a little bit different. And I can speak from experience on the running culture, but I know that this is like probably relatable and exists in all sports in a different way. But I would definitely say that there's just a false idea that being fast is correlated with being thin. I think that also, like, for me, a lot of the influence came from social media, and I do think that this is really important to bring up because, for me, I follow a lot of not only just competitors and other runners my age who have, like, separate accounts and post, like, all about their diet and eating and training, and it's like, sometimes it's super influential and, like, you like to follow along someone's journey, it's super fun, but then sometimes those accounts may not be the best influence, and also, I follow a ton of professional runners. So back at the time where, I was kind of developing disordered eating, I would see the bodies of professional runners, and I would think that I have to look like them because they are like stick thin and absolutely ripped and have a six pack. And I thought, well, I need to look like that in order to be as fast, try to be as fast as I can be, or, obviously I'm not gonna be as fast as a professional runner, but like try to reach my potential. I thought I had to aim for that body ideal. But the problem with that is that professional runners and professional athletes have been training in their sport for probably like somewhere between 10 and 20 years.
mhm,
They have been building this body over time. And as a young athlete who is still developing, and not only still developing, but are in their prime years of development as women, we are not supposed to look like that. We are supposed to have body fat and be able to produce a period, and not that professional athletes, I know for sure, like, mostly are getting their periods because I think they are super on top of this stuff and their body has become that way over so much time, so they are in a healthy state. But trying to reach that by like taking shortcuts and trying to look like that body ideal oftentimes is much more harmful than doing good. So I think that's super important, is that like you are not supposed to look like the people that you see on social media. And I that was really important for me to learn, was that like I am not supposed to have a six pack and be shredded. I'm 18 years old, like, and I'm not training anywhere near at the level that professional athletes have been for 5, 10, 20 years.
mhm.
So
Yeah, and I think, I mean, social media, obviously a huge one, but also again, going back to how you talked about every sport has an expectation, like, especially in college athletics, there's the locker room culture that is can be super harmful to people who aren't secure with their bodies. And You know, if you're not, if, like you said, if someone's maybe playing better than you and they look different than you, then you immediately expect that in order to play better, I need to look like them. And it can be super dangerous. And I think if there's not a very welcoming and warm environment in the locker room, that can also be a place where things like this can develop.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And yeah, teammates are so, so influential. And especially, when all of us are struggling with similar things, we're all in this culture, we're all in this environment. So, in some of the younger people look up to the older people or like the better girls on the team. So I think that's so important for, people who are older and more and wiser and more mature in their sport to set an example. And that was always a goal of mine, was to just be an example that, like, when we're having team dinners, like, I'm getting all the pasta, all the carbs, like, and I'm just like demonstrating that what your plate should look like. And so, but I think it's super influential and, like, dangerous when everybody is kind of struggling with being in this culture and, like, feeling like they, have to portion and ration and be super restrictive and careful about every little thing that they put in their body. So, yeah, and then, of course, just comparing body types, which is super tough because, you know, there are so many factors that go into that. Like, first off, genetics, like,
Mhm.
and, that's so important to address. Like, this girl's body that you may be, like, super, like, comparing yourself so much to, um, I mean, I'm sure, like, I don't know, like, actual fact or percentage, but I mean, a huge portion of
Mhm.
just the composition of someone's body is genetics.
Mhm.
And I think it's just so important to embrace, like, your body and what you have been given, and just not focus on the way your body looks and how it performs, but the way your body feels and how it performs. Like, your teammate may look like whatever body you're jealous of or whatever, but, like, are they playing well? Like, are they feeling good about themselves? Like, there's so many questions to ask about that. Like, and I think it's just so important to stay on your own journey and, like, look inward for the confidence that you're looking for.
Very well said. So let's kind of jump back a little bit more towards your journey. When I talked to you before, we kind of talked about you were diagnosed with orthorexia. Did I say that right? Orthorexia.
Yeah, yeah.
So kind of explain a little bit about what that is. I know it's a spectrum. The eating disorder is like they're on a spectrum, and I don't think this is really taught to people. I think maybe it's more of an afterthought whenever someone is struggling with this, then they go down and explain it. But can you kind of just like walk us through what orthorexia is and kind of what that spectrum does look like?
Yeah, yeah. So, like you said, totally, eating disorders can fall on a huge spectrum, and I think when people hear eating disorders, they think anorexia, bulimia, like
Mhm.
super, super sickly looking people who are in the hospital. Like, let's just put that out there. But you don't have to look like that to have an eating disorder and be on that spectrum somewhere. So when I talk to people, I say that I had disordered eating because I didn't exactly look the part. I definitely looked super, super thin for my body, and people noticed that. And there's, like, a large difference between, like, what I looked like then and what I looked like now in my healthy state. But I didn't look like what you imagine in your head. So I think it's super important to point that out. And then orthorexia is basically an obsession with clean eating, but super duper obsessed with putting only only foods that will benefit your body into your body and like absolutely nothing else. Like being so, so, so particular about every little thing that goes into your body and that it needs to be absolutely 100% clean. So that would clinically be what I had because I was so obsessed with everything that went in my body and would not put a single bad thing into my body, thinking that I was fueling myself properly. But the problem with that is that I there isn't um like food like super healthy foods are not energy dense. So like they are super nutritious and they have a lot of vitamins, minerals, things like that. So are like super good for your body. Like never stop putting like, you know, good healthy food into your body, but you need food that is energy dense, which means like is calorically dense. Energy is synonymous with calories.
Mhm.
So you need calorically dense food in order for your body to create energy and to have like energy stores. So like when people try to go on diets and like reduce calories, like you are reducing the energy in your body. So I think that um that was the problem is that I just simply was in an energy imbalance and didn't have enough energy availability to fuel me for my sport. And then the other term that I want to throw in there with orthorexia is RED-S, which stands for Relative Energy Deficiency in Sport. And this is kind of like a new and upcoming diagnosis, and it's super common in running, but it's starting to be seen in other sports and in males. But it's basically a shortage of energy availability to keep up with the demands of energy or demands of exercise and essential daily function, which is like producing a period and all that. So what kind of goes along with that is like the female athlete triad, which is getting a period or well, having a period but losing it. So that's called amenorrhea when you lose your period, low energy availability, and low bone density. So I had all three of those things because I lost my period and I had low energy availability and therefore low bone density from not eating enough, which is what led to my injuries. And I know we wanted to talk about that. So,
Yeah, I mean, before we talk about the injury though, I feel like if a guy is listening to this, they would hear period and laugh. Like, but it happens to women for a reason. It's our body's human nature. It has its reason for happening. And I feel like I know that's one of the topics you're very passionate about because that was something for you and for a lot of runners happens and it's not good, obviously. So can you kind of just like talk about why that's not good and like did you got yours back, right? So
mhm.
like can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, I lost my period my let me think, junior year of high school. So as soon as I started committing to um this super duper healthy diet, restricting like tons and tons of foods, I very quickly lost my period because I was rapidly losing weight. So basically didn't have enough body fat really to and energy in my body to even produce a period. So yeah, the importance of a period is it is your number one indicator of health as a female. And it is basically indicates that you have enough energy availability in your body to produce a period and therefore enough energy availability to perform well in your sport. So yeah, so I lost my period junior year of high school from all that and then basically was in like an energy deficit for years after that while I still was not fueling properly. And basically my freshman year of college when I lost a ton of weight, I was pretty aware that this was a problem. Like I knew that losing my period was not a good sign and was an indication of something was wrong. Like, that is your body's number one way of being like, something is wrong. Your body should be producing a monthly period no matter whether you're an athlete or not. It should always be. So I sought out my nutritionist at school because I kind of was aware of my problems, and I knew that food was taking over way too much of my life, and I also knew it was a problem that I wasn't getting my period. And so she started to help me formulate a plan to increase the amount of food that I was eating and therefore get my period back. I am going to speak from my own experience on getting my period back because this looks different for many people. But typically the two like most like common ways for an athlete to get their period back is stopping or reducing exercise and eating more.
Oh.
And it's really not it's really that simple of an equation, but much, much harder to do. So for me, and this kind of starts getting into my injuries, but I got my first bone injury in April of, let's see, 2020. So that was my freshman year spring. And we were home for COVID. So it was the COVID year. So I was at home and I got a stress fracture in my navicular bone in my foot. This was my first injury. And I'll get into stress fractures in a minute, but I want to stick on the period thing. So when I got that injury, I knew it was because my bone density was low from not getting my period, and I wasn't fueling enough, because that is like the number one sign like you get a stress fracture or a bone injury. It's just related to you can't make enough bone to replace the bone that you're breaking down. So it's not like you fall and like fall off your bike and completely crack your bone like you would break a bone from like trauma or something like that. But it is similar where you kind of treat it like breaking a bone, but it's caused by repeated stress.
Mm.
So all this stress over time of running and running and running and all this impact on my bones and not getting my period, not eating enough, and having low bone density caused my bone to basically crack.
Mm.
So, and this is super common with, red S, relative energy deficiency in sport. So I knew this was from not getting my period. So after my first injury and realizing how much it absolutely sucked to be out of my sport because of an injury, I decided I'm going to commit to getting my period back. I don't care what I have to eat that makes me uncomfortable or whatever. There is nothing worse than being out injured from my sport. And like, if that means I have to eat like whatever, like ice cream and cookies every night, like I wanted to be back running. That's all I
Mhm.
wanted. And I realized that nothing was worth like sacrificing my health. So I kind of just committed, and I think it helped me to be home. And so I just started eating way more. And it's not as easy as it sounds when you're, you know, super in the thick of just this restrictive eating mindset, but I just slowly started to make changes, like changing to different breads that were higher in calories, um just adding like a whole another like calorically dense snack to the day. Like, if I were to eat like a bowl of fruit in the middle of the day, like I would switch that to like a huge bowl of yogurt with like granola, nuts, like
Mhm.
fruit, like just making things what much more calorically dense than they were before. So I slowly started making these changes, just adding, challenging myself to eat foods that I once before was restricting, and just slowly challenging myself more and more. And basically that July, so from April to July, I was like super committed, and I got my period back that July for the first time. So you can do it, and it just takes a lot of commitment and dedication to eating more. And I obviously wasn't running, so I was able to rest a bit more. I was still cross training, like biking and swimming and stuff like that, but at a much like lower intensity than I probably would be. So that helped my body out as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very interesting because I think it's one of those things that I would have never known about unless I talked to you or somebody who went through it. And I can only imagine like that has to be scary. Like, when when you get to a point where you lost control of your period. Like, I feel like it's just something that I don't know. I'm just really happy that you talked about that because again, I'm sure there'll be people who like don't quite grasp the idea and they laugh about it, but it's like a big deal.
Yeah, super big deal because your body, it's just indicative that your body is not in a healthy state. And, you're at like such a higher risk for injury. And as athletes, that's not the place we want to be.
Mhm. Right. All right. So you can kind of just talk a little bit more about your injuries. I think it's as you were talking, I was thinking about this and I was thinking about how emotionally, mentally, when an injury like this happened, where it, tell me if I'm wrong, kind of is because of things from your past, like the decisions you
Yeah,
made
no, completely. Yes.
has to be very hard to handle.
Yeah.
Kind of talk about that.
Yeah. I love that question because that is one of the most challenging things about the injuries that I had is that it kind of feels like I caused them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because, getting bone injuries from low bone density is a direct result of underfueling for so many years and losing my period. So it definitely it was super challenging to feel like I kind of caused this for myself. Um, but you know, it's just like so different like in the moment, it kind of just like getting my first injury, like I said, was really what started changing my mindset around to like, oh my, it woke me up from the mindset that I was in before to realize that I need to prioritize and value consistency and my health over taking shortcuts and, putting my health in jeopardy because what's going to make me good at my sport is not eating super healthy and or being restrictive and eating like 100% like healthy all the time. It was going to be consistency and you know building training over time, and the only way I can do that is to stay healthy for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So after my first injury, I worked super hard to get back. And I totally was in the mindset that I was not gonna get injured again because I thought I had gotten myself better. I got my period back and I was like kind of back in the game. And I was like, this is never gonna happen again. I'm gonna be so committed to eating enough, fueling my body, and staying healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Then in October, when I went back my sophomore year, I got my second bone injury, which was in my sacrum, which is sort of random, but it's like the bone down there, like the bottom of your back and like above your pelvis. So that was honestly one of the hardest, like finding out that news was one of the hardest days of my life because I was under this impression that like I was so committed to never getting injured again. And then I just got injured again with the same serious injury that was going to put me out of my sport for like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really those moments where I just was at such a low point because I was just like, oh my God, realizing that my past was going to have a lasting impact
Mm-hmm.
on my career. And then fast forward, I had one more bone injury my junior year in my femur. And I think those two injuries were like the two lowest points because I realized that like this was now 2 years later, my last bone injury. So I think the importance here is that these effects on your body have or these actions on your body have long-term effects. And even though I had my period back for what, like a year and a half already, I still was getting bone injuries because my body was in this low energy availability state for so long that my body just like couldn't turn it around, and my low bone density, although you can get your period back, low bone density can linger around for a long time. So, yeah, there was definitely a lot of mental struggle with that, but it was kind of just like take one battle at a time kind of thing, I feel like in the moment. Um, but it's super hard, and I think what kind of got me through that mental piece was having mentorship, and I was mentored by um a professional runner and very close friend now who got me through a lot of stuff because she had experience with all the same problems.
Mhm.
And I mean, being mentored by her through this was literally what got me through it. So,
Mhm. I think too, like, and this is a very hard realization to come to that I don't even know if I ever actually came to throughout my injuries. And now, obviously, looking back, like hindsight, like you obviously have a different perspective on things, but there's so much more to life than a sport. And when an injury or a disorder or anything that controls and consumes your life that you're doing for your sport or is the result of your sport, if it's going to affect your life for the rest of your life, I feel like sometimes you just have to stop and be like, is this worth it? And like,
mm,
I know we talked, I got 4 surgeries. Like, I think all the time, like, if I would have just gotten one and tried to fight through it then, would things have been different? But then it's like, that wasn't good for the rest of my life. I was looking for a rest of the life solution because there's more to my life than soccer. And so I think whenever, and if you're an athlete who has a very serious mental health condition, like, just stop and ask yourself, like, is it worth it? Like, do I need to be in this place forever because of a sport? Sometimes the answer may be, I know I can fight through this and it will all be worth it in the end. And sometimes the answer may be, no, like this is going to hurt me in the long run. So I just think that's kind of food for thought.
yeah, I absolutely love that. And I think a part of my healing journey was separating a lot from the idea that like my entire identity and self-worth was in my sport. So along with recovering from like disordered eating, I think I was also recovering from just being in this little bubble that the only thing that mattered in my life was my sport. And I think the biggest advice I have for that is finding things outside of your sport that make you happy and that you're passionate about, and realizing that, yeah, there is so much more to life than your sport. And I just kind of started realizing that I value my happiness as so much more than whatever success I could have in my sport. And people still viewed me as, I wasn't accomplishing the same things, but my teammates and the people who loved me still viewed me as an amazing athlete and an even better person, so that's all I could ever ask for.
Right.
And also, I think it's also important to remember that, like, you want your body for the rest of your life. Like, you want your body to be healthy and active and able to do all the amazing things you wanna do in your life after your sport,
Mhm.
and it's not worth ruining and destroying your body for, this small little 4 years of your life to, have long lasting effects on the rest of your life. But that's a super hard, perspective to gain while you're, like, in it
Even if you
because
don't go through it, I feel like people who don't have something will happen to you, something happened to me. If you don't go through it yourself, it is very hard to ever understand that idea. But
Yeah.
it's real. Like, is it worth
Yeah.
not having kids one day? No.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Because I mean, all these issues too, like I hadn't even mentioned this part, but like can severely impact your fertility. Like if you lost your period for so long that you had, you know, like almost irreversible effects on your menstrual cycle, I mean, that affects your entire life.
Right.
So it's not worth these risks, and yeah, totally agree.
So my last question is just kind of, how did you end your running career? Like, did you end healthy? Were you on good terms with it? Did you get what you wanted out of it? Where are you now? Like, how did things wrap up for you?
Yeah. So I so my senior year, oh man. Um, so well, let me just put it in the big picture. I was I had um my first freshman year cross country season and indoor track season. Then it was COVID. So nobody was competing and I got my first injury, and I was injured from then until all the way through junior year. So I basically only had my first two freshman year seasons and then my senior year. So my entire middle 2 years, I was fully injured. I had about 3 races in the span of 3 seasons. So that's pretty in 2 years. So that's puts in perspective that I was pretty much injured all of those 2 years. And if I was racing that one race, like it was, I was like on the comeback from an injury and totally not like in a good place.
Mhm.
So, first and foremost, I was just so happy and grateful to be healthy and have a healthy season where I was able to compete. And I am so proud to say that remained healthy my entire senior year and was able to compete all 3 seasons: cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track. So, after everything that I had gone through to come back to be in that place, I was just honestly, first and foremost, so proud to be healthy and able to line up.
Mhm.
But that being said, it came with a lot more struggles than I thought, because I had to kind of cope with the fact that I was not the same athlete as I was before. I was lining up in a completely different body, um, you know, at least 20 or more pounds difference than I was before. I don't want to use the word bigger because that kind of sounds bad, like a negative connotation, but it's totally not. I am in a much, much better place now. And my fastest times were when I was at that state, at that point in time, but that's only because I was like in that kind of period that I was saying before where like your performance kind of peaks before it dips. Um, and the problem with my senior year was just that I didn't have consistency for 2 years. Like, so I wasn't able to train really. So I was not performing the way I wanted to perform and the way I kind of knew I could if I had all those years of training. So I think the hardest part of senior year was just like the fact that I wasn't performing the way I wanted to perform. And I kind of had to grieve over the fact that, like, yeah, I lost out on 2 years, and so I need to try to just be proud of the fact that, like, I'm out here and I'm doing it, and, like, this is not nearly the end of my journey in sports. Like, even though my career as an NCAA athlete is coming to an end, like, I'm super lucky in the fact that, like, running in this sport can be continued for, like, the rest of my life. Like, I can get into different races, like, I can get into half marathons, road races, like, literally, eh, like, anything. So, I think I got a lot of, just ease in knowing that, like, this doesn't have to be the end of my story. And even though like I didn't accomplish goals as a college athlete that I once had, I'm still so proud of, like, where I ended up, and, like, I'm so proud of the person that I became through that journey. So, that just made me, like that kind of brought me to a state where I was able to be super proud of the way I ended and find a lot of peace in ending the way I did, even though it wasn't, like, accomplishing goals that I once had.
Mhm.
And I definitely plan to continue running, obviously take the break mentally and physically that I need, but knowing that I always have running in my back pocket and can, like, decide to train for something and, you know, get in shape when I wanna, like, do a race and, like, whatever, I still feel like I'll always have that natural ability to and love for the sport. So, yeah, I feel like that's where I'm at now, but yeah.
Well, I love that. I feel like, and I want this to be, I feel like this is a theme over all my episodes, but I want to say this loud and clear for everyone. When you go through multiple injuries in a short span of time, you have to change your perspective. When you get back, if it's you have 1 year left of your sport, you know you have a year left of your sport. The perspective of I need to be the best athlete, I need to be the best on the team has to shift to I want to give this sport everything I have left in me. I want to just end it being proud of myself. I want to end it knowing that I beat the injury. I was healthy enough to beat the injury. The perspective of like needing to be this amazing athlete just has to change because realistically, your body is different. You're probably not going to be the same athlete you were. And that just has to be okay. For you to end happy, to end knowing you did everything that you could, you have to just be okay with it and be grateful and be graceful with yourself. You just have to.
Yes, 100%, and recognize that it's okay to grieve over like, to go through a grieving process in what you might have lost, but that it's so important to have a support system, seek out help for that,
Mhm.
um, and have people that love you no matter what you accomplish. Um, I feel like those were the number one things that seriously, like, got me through, or just the people that were so proud of watching me go through the journey that I went through, and it didn't matter, what time I ran or what, like, accolades I achieved in my last year. That didn't matter at all. It was just like yeah, so I absolutely love that because yeah, and be graceful with yourself is, like, the number one thing too, like you said. Just forgiving yourself and recognizing what you went through because, don't take that away, and, like, a lot of people that you're maybe lining up against or competing against on the field have not gone through the same thing that you have, so comparing yourself to anyone else is just, like, out of the picture because, I might be lining it up against a field of girls who have been training and healthy for these 2 years pretty much, and, like, I've been completely out. So if I'm losing to them, it makes sense, like, it makes total sense, so you just have to be so, so proud of your own journey and where you're at, which is super hard.
Mhm.
Super, super hard, but I think having a support system for that and having people that are constantly reminding you of that is what will help you get through that.
I agree. Well, is there anything else that you would like to talk about that I forgot or just anything in general?
I don't think so, I feel like we covered a lot, but really just empowering young athletes to have fun with your sport, don't lose the joy. It's like and to just fuel your bodies and remember that, you know, eating all the foods, having balance, that all comes with um making yourself happy to be making yourself happy does play a huge role in performance.
Yeah. Well, if you guys liked what Jess had to say and you want to hear more of it, she has her own podcast called Run on Thought. So definitely check it out. I'm definitely going to go check it out too. I think just like hearing that, obviously our stories are very different. But when you can come together and, even if you talk more about running based or whatever it may be, like just knowing that you're not the only person who's gone through a tough time is just it helps with the healing process. So if you guys, like I said, enjoyed what Jess said today on the Strong Scars podcast, go check out Run on Thought. I think it would be really helpful to just kind of hear more in detail these things that we talked about, because obviously we can't go into every topic for a half hour. So, but Jess, thank you so much for coming on. Again, thank you so much for just being vulnerable with us and being open. And I know that if somebody is going through something similar and listens to this episode, that you will have made a difference. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Bailey. It's amazing.